Welcome back to Everything Aaron, a space for culture, commentary, and conscious living. I'm Erin. This podcast is for people who want to engage with what's happening around us without losing themselves in the noise. We make room for clarity, nuance, and self-definition. Each episode is an invitation to think critically, feel honestly, and stay grounded while navigating power, identity, and change, both in the world and within ourselves. Wherever you're listening from, I'm glad you're here. And as Jeezy says, let's get it. There is so much tension in the air right now. Everyone is being loud and performative. Everyone has a take. Everyone is rushing to decide who deserves grace and who doesn't. This is not that kind of conversation. Today, I want to talk about Jasmine Crockett, Bonnie Willis, and Letitia James, not as personalities and not as symbols, but as a pattern. Because when the same reactions show up across different women in different roles in different states, we're no longer talking about individual behavior. We're talking about how power is policed, specifically how Black women are treated when they hold authority and refuse to soften it for public comfort. What's often labeled as arrogance is just clarity. What's framed as aggression is often just decisiveness. And what gets called controversy is just competence that doesn't come wrapped in humility. There is an unspoken rule that says Black women can be present in power, but only if we make ourselves small while holding it. And this conversation isn't about whether you like Jasmine, Fonnie, or Letitia. It's about whether we're honest enough to notice the double standards shaping the narrative around them. But also, if you don't like them, I'm side-eyeing the fuck out of you. This episode isn't just about the collective outrage we feel as Black women. It's about perception, it's about power, and it's about what it costs to stay self-defined in systems that benefit from your silence. So if you're interested in clarity and brutal honesty about what's happening, you're in the right place. Until the next time. So stay with me. Now, before we get deeper into the conversation, let's talk about what Letitia James, Fonnie Willis, and Jasmine Crockett all have in common. All three of these beautiful Black women are high-profile Democratic lawyers who use legal and political power to confront fucked up right-wing agendas, voter suppression, racism, and stand up to Trump and his minions at significant personal and political risk to themselves from MAGA nuts and even so-called members of their own party. Let's start with Letitia James. Letitia James is New York's state attorney general. Her holding this position is groundbreaking, is a groundbreaking feat within itself because she's the first Black woman elected to statewide office in New York and the state's first woman elected attorney general. Let that sink in for a moment. Prior to her holding this position, she was a Brooklyn baddie who worked as a public defender and assistant attorney general before she then served on the New York City Council and as a New York public advocate. Her work has focused on economic justice, consumer protection, and housing. Today, she is nationally known for her aggressive civil actions against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, the NRA, big tech, and opioid manufacturers, positioning herself as a progressive watchdog over corporate and executive power. To people that see her as the litigator she is, Letitia is the steady hand that gets things done for New Yorkers. Now, Jasmine Crockett is a Democratic member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Texas' 30th District. Previously, she served one term in the Texas House. Our good sis is from the Lou, aka St. Louis, and was a civil rights attorney and a former Texas public defender who represented Black Lives Matter activists and built a successful practice focusing on criminal defense and civil rights. Today, she is known for her bleach blonde, bad built butch body title that she gave Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her high profile never scared criticism of Donald Trump and Republican efforts to curtail voting rights, and most recently, her decision to run for U.S. Senate. Jasmine is the media savvy, sharp questioning, fiery speech powerhouse that commands attention. Fani Willis is a no-nonsense Georgia peach as well as a history maker. As the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, she is the first Black woman to hold that office. Before she became a Southern Belle, the Cali-born, D.C.-raised lawyer studied political science at Howard, go Bisons, and law at Emory. Since then, she has spent 16 years as a Fulton County prosecutor, noted for complex racketeering cases like the Atlanta Public Schools cheating scandal. Today, she has gained international attention by using Georgia's RICO statute in high-impact prosecutions, including the racketeering case against Donald Trump and co-conspirators over the 2020 election interference in Georgia, as well as Trump's mugshot that will live in infamy. Fani is tough, methodical, and maintains her resolve even through intense media scrutiny. Now, despite all these beautiful Black women holding different political positions, they all are actively fighting for the vulnerable through public defense, civil rights legislation, or prosecution. I'm going to say that again. These Black women in all of their positions are actively fighting for the vulnerable through public defense, civil rights litigation, or prosecution. Their trajectories embody Black women's leadership in law and politics to challenge abuses of power while broadening who is seen as a legitimate wielder of that authority. And more importantly, all of these women have taken on Trump or Trump-aligned agendas, making them lightning rods for right-wing backlash, threats, and national culture war narratives that we are going to discuss right here today. So when it comes to public attacks, they recycle the same familiar mix of radicalized, gendered, and angry, illegitimate Black woman tropes to attack all of these women. And as Black women, we all can relate to this in our day-to-day lives. So the first attack that they like to use is the claim of being corrupt or weaponizing the law. I know, funny, right? So listen, Letitia James is frequently accused by Trump and his sycophants of running a corrupt, politically motivated agenda. But the truth is, she is one of the few people in this world to hold his ass accountable for the fraudulent shit he has done and continues to do. Now they keep attacking her with the mortgage fraud cases as revenge for her pursuing the civil fraud suits against him. And now that Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney, is trying to worm his way back into Trump's good graces, he is trying to allege that Letitia James had a hand in coercing his testimony in the Stormy Daniels case, which we all know is a flat out fucking lie. Once a liar, always a liar. Funny how the truth changes when the grift is no longer profitable, huh? Now, when it comes to Fani Willis, she's been painted as a rogue or corrupt prosecutor because she dared to bring the Trump RICO case. They want to say that it was all for Democratic retribution or to build a name for herself. Y'all remember how they kept fixating on that romantic relationship she had with an attorney in her office and travel expenses? And most recently, they brought her before the Georgia State Senate Committee to talk about the same bullshit all over again. Like she said, how in the fuck could she have been actively seeking to hire people just to prosecute Trump? Is she a fucking psychic or something? How else could anyone have predicted that he was going to try and steal the election? No. She's not a psychic. She was just being the competent, brilliant attorney that she is and hiring the best of the best to work in her office on behalf of the people of Fulton County. This is all a part of a pattern narrative against Black women using their prosecutorial power. They are depicted as inherently biased, vengeful, or unprofessional and incapable of exercising neutral legal authority. Political misogyny channels this into nasty claims that portray black women as fundamentally illegitimate occupants of office. And because of that, it makes everyone look at any black woman in a similar position in the same way. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to ethics and doing the right thing, black women are usually the only ones who consistently stand up against injustice. And because of that, they try to do that reverse psychology shit and call us corrupt to deflect from their own bullshit because they don't like having to follow the law. They think they are above it. The law applies to everyone but them. How dare we as black women stand up to them and be the real Lady Justice, reminding them that they are not exempt. One of the reasons that they have such a problem with this is because they are used to being the ones to always wield power over us, especially as black women. From the days when we were enslaved and our wombs, our children, and our bodies belonged to them, we had no way to fight back against them or hold them accountable. And many of them are still stuck in that past. They want to bring it back. And that is the main reason Bonnie and Letitia upset them so much. These women are just holding up a mirror, showing them their own duplicity and the most that only a black woman can do. Attack number 2. Attacks on intelligence, competence, and professionalism. The orange fuck currently occupying the White House has repeatedly called Jasmine Crockett a low IQ person. Now, coming from someone who had his sister do his homework in college and has to be one of the most financially incompetent businessmen that has ever lived, it's laughable that he could even fix his twisted mouth to say some shit like that. When it comes to Fonnie and Letitia, they both brought their respective cases against Trump. So many so-called pundits tried to say that it was an amateur move or they were exercising poor judgment by doing so. They just totally ignored the fact that both of these women were able to seek grand juries and get the courts to agree with them. In all of these instances, despite the facts that all of these women had solid arguments and are very competent, seasoned attorneys, they all were victims of the long-standing stereotype that black women are less competent. They completely look over our credentials and our training and think that the only reason we have anything is because of identity politics. But what is truly hilarious is how all of them are finding out in real time that they are the biggest recipient of identity politics, giving them a leg up, even though they've already had a 400-year start and still can't get their shit together. Black women make up over 50% of post-secondary degree holders, and I am proud to count myself among them. But sadly, studies still show that black women in leadership positions are more likely to be described as unintelligent, inexperienced, or unqualified, even when our credentials match or exceed our peers. Now, I know many of us have experienced that firsthand. I know I have. In my field, I am finally in a position now where I report to someone more credentialed than me, but that's because I also report to another black woman. What Jasmine, Fonnie, and Letitia are enduring is the same thing that many, if not all of us, experience on a day-to-day basis on a smaller scale. From having to report to supervisors or managers that don't know a fraction of what we know and constantly having to prove ourselves, to being forced to remain professional in the face of their microaggressions. And don't even get me started on when they want you to train someone for a position that they keep giving you excuses as to why you can't be the one to fill it. There is no one walking this earth that has the intelligence, the competence, and the professionalism of a black woman. And just like Jasmine, Fonnie, and Letitia, who many times are the only black women in certain spaces, we as black women consistently show up and show out with our intelligence in situations that no one else could thrive in. Attack number 3. Personal life scrutiny and sexualized or moralized narratives. Now, despite the fact that Fonnie Willis had solid evidence of election interference that Trump and his minions engaged in, it was all overshadowed and looked over because of her relationship with a special prosecutor. Y'all see how they have repeatedly raked her over the coals with idiotic things such as it's improper. She was using taxpayer money to lay up with her man. Despite the fact that all of this is completely absurd, it was the perfect excuse for them to call her authority into question. It didn't matter that a sitting president was paying off a porn star or that the same sitting president also partook in the trafficking and other reprehensible crimes that happened on Epstein Island. But no, a short-lived office romance is where America draws the line. But we know that's only the case when it's a black woman involved. In Letitia James' case, they tried to dig up dirt on her family members and make her guilty by association because of things those family members may have done. They used this as a way to cast a negative light on her character and find an excuse to bring mortgage fraud charges against her. Again, interesting how the con in chief has scammed people at fake universities and bankrupted casinos, as well as buried an ex-wife on a golf course to escape paying taxes. But again, no one is morally outraged about that. Only black women deserve to have their personal lives scrutinized down to every minute detail. What Fonnie and Letitia have experienced is having classic tropes weaponized against them. With Fonnie, it was the Jezebel trope. You know, the hypersexual, manipulative black woman that sleeps her way to the top. It doesn't matter what type of relationship, romantic or personal, it becomes proof that somehow she's morally unfit for office. Now, I know Letitia has to be just as tired of them folks as Fonnie is with their shenanigans. They keep bringing up mortgage fraud cases against Letitia, feeding into a trope that we all know, but actually has never applied to black women, the welfare queen. Y'all know Reagan was a big proponent of pushing that bullshit in the 80s. Welfare queens are lazy, fraudulent, and dependent on the state. It's one of the ways that white supremacy started to condition people against giving a fuck about each other, because heaven forbid that someone get any help with anything that you as the high moral police think they aren't entitled to. So let's talk more on the welfare queen allegations. In all actuality, the true welfare queens are white Americans because they make up anywhere from 34 to 50% of people on welfare. And that's just the average white American needing welfare. The government contracts that people like Elon Musk are handed on a silver platter is corporate welfare at its best. This trope has been used politically against black women in office to impute that they are grifters misusing public resources. What Fonnie and Letitia have both experienced is the way that black women's bodies, households, and relationships are put on trial to delegitimize their public authority. What is also striking about both of these tropes is that when it comes to sexual promiscuity and welfare queens in political sectors, both of these tropes apply to white men in a way that they will never, I repeat, never apply to the black women that they've tried to associate them with. Attack number 4, stereotypes of aggression, divisiveness, and disrespect. I know that almost every black woman alive has experienced being labeled as one of these. I know I have. Well, Aaron, Rayanne said you were being hostile when she wanted to pull one of your direct reports to her team. No, I wasn't being hostile. I just told that bulldog face looking bitch that she wasn't pulling my strongest producing team member and she didn't like that shit. Come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. We have seen them time and time again try and paint Jasmine Crockett as out of control or disrespectful in the House committee hearings, especially when Marjorie Taylor Greene's ugly ass was involved. They constantly complain about Jasmine's tone and how loud she may or may not speak, instead of talking about the substance of her arguments about racism and decorum. But that's what they do. Going with stereotypical attacks is their only tried and true method to deflect from their own aggressiveness, their lack of training, good manners, and most of all, their lack of knowledge. Now, we all know that the news and these political commentators these days are a fucking joke. They shouldn't even call themselves commentators, but I digress. One of their favorite pastimes is saying Letitia and Fonnie are vindictive attack dogs and radical. This type of language taps into every single angry black woman trope whenever they pursue aggressive legal strategies against powerful white defendants. When it comes to doing the right thing, I guess I can understand where it might be perceived as radical if you are a member of a class of people that have been conditioned to not even know what doing the right thing is. Attack 5, delegitimizing them as representatives of democracy. The continued rhetoric spewed against Jasmine, Fonnie, and Letitia has been that they are the ones undermining democracy because they're using the law and truth-telling to hold Trump and his minions accountable. They continue to be painted as the ones that are anti-democratic because they dare to hold people accountable. Letitia James and Fonnie Willis specifically have been framed by the felon-in-chief as enemies of real Americans. We all know that the real American comment is just a dog whistle to the MAGA base to continue to attack these women. Because of this harmful rhetoric, they're now shouldering the blame of being seen as the evil women persecuting MAGA and the president that MAGA loves so much, instead of just women doing their jobs and holding up the laws in place and the Constitution. Because of the continued efforts to delegitimize their authority, it only continues to reinforce this widespread issue that any black woman in leadership is suspect, partisan, or completely out of place in institutions that are supposed to be neutral. But we all know the truth of the matter is that black women are usually the only ones in society capable of being neutral. We are not afraid to call a thing and call a spade a spade. Because of the way the world has seen us since we were enslaved, they're incapable of seeing us not only as leaders, but as a representative of moral values and the principles that this country was supposed to be founded on, because they can't even be a representative of those values themselves. Now, how do these 5 stereotypes affect black women running for office? I know I've thrown a lot of information about the tactics the oppressor tries to use to humble us, but really, let's dive deeper into how it affects those of us that want to run for office. Now, while it's true that the tactics we discuss do not always stop us from winning, they still shape how voters see us. It often leads to them trying to depress support for us in the primaries or come up with excuses as to why we are not electable. We saw this clearly when Madam VP Kamala Harris ran for president, and we're seeing it now as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett runs for U.S. Senate. Number 1, electability penalties in the primaries. Now, while we are seen as being more liberal, it doesn't tend to translate into extra support from voters because they think we can't win a general election. Because people have these doubts, it makes it so much harder for us to stand out in crowded primaries. Because while some voters know that we are the best candidate, they still would choose a white male candidate because that is who they assume others will vote for. We saw that with the previously crowded Democratic candidate field for president in past years. We are even seeing rumblings of it now online as everyone assumes that Gavin Newsom should be the presumptive Democratic nominee and that he has the best chance to win the presidency. But because some people have that attitude, they fail to overlook some of his own problematic issues because they feel like he still would be the safest bet. Even against Madam VP Kamala Harris, who still remains widely popular even now, especially since she's been on that book tour, and especially since the criminal in chief has been doing everything he's been doing to destroy this country. Number 2, biased trait ratings and angry perceptions. When racial resentment and sexism are high, Black women political leaders are more likely to be described as angry or aggressive, no matter what they do. We all saw this play out, again, between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jasmine Crockett. Marjorie was always loud, off-putting, condescending, and racist, but if Jasmine Crockett put her in her place, she was always deemed as being the problem or being the angry black woman. If you're constantly labeled as angry or hostile, it affects your likability and how you are seen professionally. Likability and professionalism are key traits that voters look for, or should I say, they used to look for before America became the sunken place, but I digress. If people don't like you, then you get passed over in favor of someone else. A good majority of us have experienced this. You know, for instance, that you are the best person for the job and you've already been doing it and running circles around everyone, and you still get passed up for the promotion because people perceive us as angry and unlikable. Number 3, appearance, phenotype, and respectability. We don't need studies to tell us that skin tone and hairstyle influence how people see you. We deal with this every day, and it is the same in the political arena. Some voters are not going to vote for a black woman with darker skin or a woman that rocks her natural hair because it's seen as less professional. It all goes back to white supremacy. The closer you are to whiteness or attempt to assimilate into it, the more acceptable you're seen as. It's the reason why in interviews and in professional settings, most of us have been taught to only wear your hair in basic black, no over-the-top hairstyles or color, and definitely don't wear braids, a twist out, or an afro. Because of this type of discrimination is the reason the Crown Act had to be put in place, to stop penalizing us for wearing the hair that grows out of our scalps the way that nature made it. As if not having to deal with the issues with skin color and hairstyle aren't enough, we also have to deal with the way clothes fit our damn bodies. Most of the time, you have to dress like an elderly grandmother to even attempt to be taken seriously. It wasn't that long ago that Washington was all in an uproar because Michelle Obama dared to wear a dress with her arms showing, and all of us are old enough to remember the way they denigrated her over her skin color. They're using the same attack on Jasmine, Fonnie, and Letitia. Their attempts to pigeonhole us sometimes is a major hindrance to us being able to authentically be ourselves. Number 4, structural barriers and threat environment. According to research on the campaigns of black women, we face even more obstacles such as weak party recruitment, inequitable fundraising, and winner-take-all systems. You add all of that with the stereotype that we lack leadership skills and are unelectable, and it's a recipe for fucking disaster. But wait, there's more. As black women, we also deal with higher levels of racist, sexist abuse, threats, and disinformation. We already know that Fonnie Willis has not even been able to live in her own home due to the threats that she continues to face to this day for daring to prosecute Trump. Jasmine Crockett pays for her own security protection because there are so many threats directed against her. And when it comes to disinformation, they kept putting out lies about Kamala Harris her entire campaign. Because of the high level of threats and barriers, it's meant to discourage black women from running and to be a signal to donors that supporting us is a risk. So what's the net effect on elections? Simple. Black women remain underrepresented, even though our turnout and political engagement are the highest of anyone. We aren't called the 92% for no reason. It's annoying that voters and party gatekeepers are still able to step in the way of our success. We continue to stand on what some scholars call a glass cliff. A lot of the time, black women candidates only are successful in heavily Democratic or heavily black areas. And when we're recruited into running in other races, stereotypes and structural barriers narrow the path for victory to us. So what can we learn from all of this? No matter what the cause, black women don't flinch. We don't cower. It doesn't matter how hard the world tries to paint us as something other than what we are. We stand 10 toes down, and we don't let others dictate our narrative. We know our power, and we will not, I repeat, we will not let systems of oppression or bad talking points take that away from us. Our power and our influence are divinely given. We know that as long as these systems and these oppressive people are here on this earth, we will have to deal with them. There's no escaping that reality. But how we deal with them is what matters. Sometimes it's all right for us to get down in the paint and show them they are not the biggest person on the court. Other times, the best strategy is simply to keep a smile on your face and use your stunning intellect and beat them at their own game. Chess, not checkers. We are not incompetent, illegitimate, diabolical Jezebels. What we are is the embodiment of the divine feminine and the blueprint for life, liberty, and justice. As we close, I want to bring us back to where we started. This conversation was about noticing the pattern beneath the noise and the constant lies. Because when Black women like Jasmine Crockett, Fonnie Willis, and Letitia James step fully into their authority, what unsettles people isn't the work, it's the refusal to flinch while doing it. Power held calmly disrupts expectations. Confidence without apology unsettles narratives, and self-definition exposes the rules we're not supposed to name. So if this episode stirred something in you, discomfort, clarity, recognition, sit with it. Because the question isn't whether Black women in power will ever be accepted without conditions. The question is whether we're willing to interrogate why acceptance has always come with demands attached. This moment requires outrage. It requires attention. It requires discernment. It requires honesty about who we trust with authority and who we expect to earn it over and over again. And if you're a Black woman listening, navigating visibility, leadership, or becoming something new, know this: you're not imagining the resistance. You're not required to shrink for legitimacy, and you don't owe anyone a softer version of you. This has been Everything Erin. Thank you for staying present in this conversation. Stay with me. Now, as I close out, I would like to leave you with some affirmations. First, I choose the language that defines me. 2, I affirm that my authority does not require permission. 3, I affirm that my clarity is not arrogance. It is self-definition. I affirm that I do not shrink to make power more comfortable for others. And lastly, I am allowed to stand firm, to be seen, and to lead without flinching. If you want to support Everything Erin, be sure to follow me on Substack, YouTube, and TikTok. Head over to Amazon and get lost in one of my many published romance novels, all under my government name, Erin Ashley Tanner, and stay and pay attention to the show notes. I'll see you again.